Welcome to 7 EPM enhancements you can do by year end if you literally started today. My name is Edward Roski. I am CEO here at Argonaut Intro, and you'll be hearing a whole lot of ideas over the course of the next 45-ish minutes. As we're going through all of those, even if you think I can't accomplish this before the end of the year, realize things don't need to take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. If you scope these things down and tackle a small initiative, you're going to have the ability to really move things ahead and move them ahead quickly. We are in the home stretch of 2021. Apparently, there are 45 days left in the year. That doesn't seem right because I'm pretty sure we're still around May of 2020, but apparently 18 months have passed in like 18 days. But we're 6 weeks away from the end of the year. And all of us, you deserve kudos, credit for getting to here. It has been a really tough couple of years. I look back at the roaring 20s that we got in like the 1920s. I'm like, this was supposed to be our decade. And it was roaring, but the sound was apparently a flaming dumpster fire. But we've dealt with it. But it's not over. I don't mean COVID isn't over. The ripples from the COVID shove are still happening. We have these ripples in supply chain. We have ripples which supply and demand being out of whack, and supply chain issues are hitting inflation. The impact that we have seen over the last 2 years has been felt across every industry, across every country, all around the world, small companies, medium-sized companies, big companies. And we have been impacted. Things have happened to us. So we have to ask ourselves, are there things that we can go out and impact? Is there something we can do in these last 45 days of 2021? So I'm here today to give you 7 enhancements that you can start now and finish before you grab your tasty beverage, glass of champagne, sparkling apple juice, whatever it is, before you grab that glass and head out to ring in the new year. Try and remember the words of Auld Lang Syne. So I'm going to give you 7 things that you can realistically do in 45 days plus or minus 15. Well, some of you, I'm guessing, and I'll take a poll in a second to see if I'm actually right on this. Some of you, I'm guessing, are still in an on-prem world. And there is a version that falls out of support. If you are not on at least 11.2, preferably you should be on 11.2.7. But if you're not on at least 11.2, if you're on, say, 11.1.2.4 or 11.1.1 or anything, God forbid, older than that, that all falls off of support in December, at the end of December. So when we're bringing in the new year, if you're on an older version, you're out of full support. And this message has been being delivered for a couple of years, yet every time I say it, someone's like, that can't be right. It's because the last 2 years just went by really, really quickly. I assure you it's true. But let's say you're not on-prem. You're either in the cloud, or you have access to the cloud, or you have access to other products. I'm going to use Oracle EPM because I know most of your Oracle EPM customers, either current or prospective. But if you have other solutions, generally the time frame should be about the same for these other things I'm going to recommend. So 2 through 6, if you're like, well, we have blank product and it takes 10 times as long as this, maybe you have the wrong product, or maybe you're getting kind of overbid. I'll give you a for instance. There are a lot of products that do account reconciliation out there. But if you actually go, I'm going to narrow my scope down. I'm going to verify that my general ledger equals my consolidation system. Because right now there's a lot of time being sucked up during month and quarter and year-end close in validating numbers. I'm going to verify all the numbers in this system equal all the numbers in that system. That's a 45-day project. That is not a massive initiative. And then let the system just spit out, here are the 2% that you need to go investigate. Scenario modeling. Please don't go into 2022 with only one set of numbers. I will bet you any amount of money you want, your numbers will be wrong. I think it was Aesop had a fable that was a mouse with one hole is soon captured. There's a whole fable that goes with it. And think about it in a budget world. If you have one number, you're going to have problems. The world has never changed this fast before, and it will never change this slowly again. In case you think the world's going to settle, it's not. Just when we thought we were done with COVID, it's like, oh, let's have supply chain issues. I don't know, maybe Evergrande, the second largest company in China, maybe that could default on all of its things and cause a ripple in the global economy. What would that look like for fun? You must have different scenarios. So take whatever that budget is that you hopefully have finalized or nearing finalization for right now, and then make 3 to 5 other copies of it with a totally different set of numbers. Narrative reporting, how could you give context? Because you're not going to exactly hit your budget or your forecast for next year. If you do, it means you're aiming for your budget or your forecast. Situations should hit you in the face. There should be external factors affecting your numbers. When those do happen and you either beat or miss, but either way, you're not right on with your budgets and your forecast, how can you communicate that? How can you do that variance analysis in a system going into 2022? So that you're not doing it out loud or in emails or through Zoom meetings. Can you get a handle on the tasks related to your close process or related to your budgeting process? Task manager is something that most people think of as part of financial close and consolidation. It can be split out. You can do just a task manager implementation. Number 6, planning modules. I was about to say it is not possible to implement a brand new complete budgeting system in 6 weeks or less, but it has been done. Bill Mowell from Children's Hospital, Colorado, did implement planning on the cloud, start to finish. And I think he started on Memorial Day and was live that year by Independence Day, which I thought was poetic, right? Kill your old system on Memorial Day, you're now independent on Independence Day. But for most of us, not realistic. What is more likely to happen is you can tackle one very targeted area. So we're going to talk through what some of those areas are that you might want to go through. And if nothing else, don't go into 2022 without some idea of what you want to accomplish strategically in 2022. I'm joking, but only half joking. This year got away from me. And I think it got away from all of us. It was amazing that the days took forever, but somehow the year went by overnight. So figure out what you're going to do strategically into 2022. Don't go into 2022 just firefighting. Don't assume that you're just going to do what you've been doing every single month and repeat it. It is a massive year of change. So we're going to start. And before I go into this one, I'm going to get an idea of what versions you actually have. This is assuming that you're on Oracle EPM. If you're not, there's an option kind of for you for that one as well. So it should be a poll on your screen. So if you are on the cloud, select Oracle. Oh, by the way, you can multi-select. So the percentage is, I think what? Oh no, it is single choice. So you're gonna have to pick one. So pick whatever your dominant one is. So if you're fully on the cloud, that's Oracle Cloud EPM. If you're on a version that expires, that would be 11.124 or earlier. If you're on an on-prem version that stays the same, you'd be on Hyperion 11.2. And if you're just here because, oh, God's willing, someday we'll have the coolness that is all these stuff Edward's going to make me greedy about or jealous of, you'd pick not yet, but someday. And I'll give you about 5 more seconds. I need this data so I can kind of tailor what I'm going to be saying in a little bit. Some of you are like, what if it's not applicable? What if I'm like just a consultant? I'm just glad you're here. We always welcome the vendors. We always welcome our competitors. We're all in this together. If COVID has proven nothing, we're all much more interconnected than we actually realize. Okay, ending poll. So we're about tied between the I don't have it and I'm on the cloud, and 27% of you are on the expiring version, and at least for all of you on today, 0% of you are on the version that doesn't fall off of full support. Okay, good to know. So let's talk this through for a second. Oracle 11.2.7 is the latest version as of the last moment I checked. It came out in October of 2021. 11.2 has been out more than a year at this point. The numbers that you just showed me are not shocking. A handful of our customers have made the move to 11.2. I'll tell you what most customers are doing is they're just moving to the cloud. So they're sticking with on-prem as long as they can, and then they're just making the cloud jump when it comes time. But there are some good things in 11.2. It has been out long enough that it is now supported on both Linux and Windows. Originally, it was kind of just Windows only. Now it's Linux and Windows. There are some features, but it is not meant to be a feature upgrade. If you're looking for all the cool new stuff, like, oh, I really want to do driver-based planning, and I want to have a library of drivers I can pick from, that's the cloud. While there are a few new features in 11.2, it's more meant to be kind of a terminal edition. Here's the good news. If you get to it, you can stay on it for the next 10 years. Right now, it is going to be supported, and they can only move it one direction. Right now, it's going to be supported at least through December of 2031. And when I say can only move in one direction, that date will not move up. It could theoretically get moved back if in a decade from now, people are still running it. That's the version that is fully supported, which leads me to 11.1 and all of its versions, 11.1.2, .1, .2, .3, 11.1.2.4. Premier support for this version ends December 2021. So I take it back, 27% of you that are on that version or earlier, you fall to what's called sustaining support at the end of December. Without going into details, if you're curious, that link right up there, feel free to type it into your browser. Don't go to it right now because we're having fun watching a webcast, but go to that link later on. That is actually a link from Oracle themselves explaining why they're dropping support, kind of what it means, what the impact will mean. I will give you the Edward summary of what it means to go from Premier support to sustaining support. It's like going from being alive to going to life support. You're being kept alive barely by a machine when you fall to sustaining support. Here's most often what will happen if you're on sustaining support. You call up and say, hey, there's a bug I just noticed. They will say one of two things. That is a known bug on the day we dropped support, therefore we will eventually fix it. Or they will say, that was not a known bug on the day we dropped off Premier support, sucks to be you. You really need to get to 11.2 or you need to go to the cloud. So Premier support, let's say on January 1st of 2022, so in 46 days, everyone's data gets deleted every Tuesday. I don't know, there's a weird quirk with the Intel chip. Or let's say that on January 1st, it turns out there's a major security vulnerability. And anybody with 5 lines of code can hack into your system. If that bug exists in 11.2, they will fix it. If that bug exists in 11.1.2, they will not fix it. You do not want to be in this situation. If you are in that situation, just realize you're going on a tightrope without a net. Do it. If you're going to do it, don't do it for very long. Okay, Edward's stopping preaching now. For the most part, it's actually a pretty simple upgrade. It is an out of place upgrade. So you got to have another server, another VM, and kind of move things over to there. If you have questions, again, use the little Q&A down at the bottom, and I'll get to them at any point. It's a pretty simple upgrade. It's an out of place upgrade. It is not a massive change. It's not like going from system 9 to 11 or 7 to 9 or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward, with the exception of the stuff on this screen. If you are using within HFM, Financial Management Analytics, or like EAL to take your HFM data and send it over to Essbase, that's gone in 11.2. If you're using interactive reporting, production reporting, web analysis, those are gone. If you're using EPMA, and I'll come back more to that one in a second, that one is gone. If you're using Hyperion Strategic Finance, Crystal Ball, Standard User Interface, or any of the pre-built modules, those are not in 11.2. If you're using Hyperion Disclosure Management, that one's not there. Or if you're using my favorite app that no one ever used, the EPM mobile app, if I could wax poetic about it for 5 seconds, because I'm never going to be able to do it again, you were able to approve budgets like from the golf course. You could just pull up like on an app on your phone and somebody would go like, are you ready to approve this budget? You'd say yes, and it would approve it. It was totally fun. It's also gone. What that means, if you're on any of those products, you have to figure out another method when you go to 11.2, or you'll have to one-off that. Like I do have some customers who are like, yeah, we really want to go to EPM Cloud and convert Strategic Finance over, but we're just not ready yet. So they actually upgraded all their stuff to 11.2 except Strategic Finance. They kind of orphaned that on an old 11.124 server, and they know that server's playing without a net. The biggest one that is going to impact a lot of people, because most people aren't using most of that stuff on that last screen. The one that probably 20% of 11124 customers are using, should have had a poll for that, is Hyperion Enterprise Performance Management Architect, EPMA. It was being used for kind of two main concepts. Concept number one is people were using it to, in some cases, kind of data sync information back and forth. The other way it was kind of being used was as a hierarchy sync, basically a way to keep whatever your chart of accounts in sync between all your different applications. If it's that first need, you're going to have to replace it with some other sort of ETL, some other way of getting the data back and forth. It never did a very good job at it anyway, so there's your opportunity to export import through some other method. If you're using it for the second thing, which is a system of record for hierarchies, here's the good news. They're giving you a very expensive product for free at 11.2. That is data relationship management. Data relationship management, it is going to replace your dimension maintenance and your hierarchy management. We want to add a new account, and on this day we want to push all the systems. That's now DRM. If a hierarchy changes in this system, I want it to feed automatically to the other system. That's DRM. Now, DRM is actually product agnostic. There's nothing in it that makes it Hyperion specific. A lot of companies use it just as a standalone tool to keep in sync, their on-prem data warehouse with their on-prem ERP. You're not allowed to use it for that purpose. You're not like, oh, I've just won the lottery. They're giving me a really expensive product and I can use it to sync my entire company. No, this is very restricted use DRM. It is supported for Hyperion on-prem apps only. You must either be using DRM to take a hierarchy and import it into a Hyperion app, or to take a hierarchy out of a Hyperion app. You also do not have access to data relationship governance, and you also don't have access to DRM analytics. So it's meant to be a replacement for EPMA. But not only is the user interface better, not only is it more user driven, there are cool things you can do in DRM that you couldn't do in EPMA. So if you're still in on-prem world and you're like, you know what, for whatever reason, we're holding off on the cloud for a year or two, you have access to things like derived properties, versioning, transaction history, who changed the hierarchy and when, custom validations, custom exports, hierarchy comparison. Your auditor wants to know what changed from the start of COVID to the end of COVID. DRM can output that and tell it all to you. So if you are in this situation, you're probably not getting this done in 30 days. Or if you have to replace any of those ETLs. But for most standard implementations, not if you're, I don't know, Walmart trying to upgrade 45 servers. But for the average company, this is a 30 to 60 day upgrade. If you're like, I don't have time to do this by the end of the year, at least go stand up a VM, install 11.2 on it, and export and import your application onto that server, so that if, God's forbid, your 11.1.2 does flame out at any point, you at least have an 11.2 instance up and running while you're trying to convince Oracle that that bug already existed before January 1st. Okay, let's talk about account reconciliation. On this one, I'm also assuming that you might have other products out there for it. So this is a multiple choice because I'm assuming you might have different answers potentially. I'm going to allow that you're using Excel to do your account reconciliations. It's probably the #1 account reconciliation tool like on the planet. You might be using Oracle EPM. You might be using Blackline for it. You might be using the Power of Humans. Any of those are valid. Right now, only 10% of you are coming in with the human power. Respect. Okay, I'll give you about 5 more seconds to reply. This is not at all surprising. The #1 at 64% of you is you're using Excel to do your account reconciliation. #2 is another product, which could include Oracle EPM or something else. And about 18% of you are in a Blackline world. And single digits of you are doing it through human power. I'm going to go out on a limb and say humans are involved no matter what. When I go out and we do this annual survey where we ask a couple hundred companies, how long does your close take? And sometimes I'll call up people and I'll say, can I deep dive into your results, help understand where the bottlenecks are? The #1 Data-related delay in the entire close process is data validation. On average, 30% of those customers I survey, 30% of their close time is spent validating data. Literally seeing if this number equals that number. While you might think you're really good at it, I mean, hell, cavemen were going, ugh, does this rock look like this rock? That is not a good use of our higher level thinking. That is something robots are really good at, and we should let the robots do it. We don't want to be slowing down our process. Frankly, the humans don't want to be doing it either. Nobody feels really smart at the end of the day when like, yeah, I validated all that stuff. Please don't go down this path. You really want to be in a situation of letting robots go figure out your data, go figure out your reconciliation. If you think that this isn't a problem, I'll give you some questions you can ask. Number one, what percentage of the close time are you actually spending doing things like account reconciliation? Is this even happening? Are you in actually a situation where no one's actually validating the data and you're just trusting that your processes are working? What tools are you using? Are you using Excel? Are you using a great system I like to call email to make sure everything's tying? Is every account truly being reconciled? Or are you just going, well, net income equals retained earnings, must be right. Or intercompany sales equal intercompany COGS, so I assume it's right in the details. Are you reconciling at the correct levels? Should you be doing it at that high level? Should you be doing it at the details? Should you be doing it at the sub-account level? Should you be doing it at the sub-ledger type level? And if you allow the possibility that balances, that numbers actually can change during close, are you re-reconciling? Are your reconciles actually getting updated? If the answer to any of those is no, we're not updating and we're not reconciling, we're not truly reconciling everything, we don't have the right tools, it's not really happening, and way too much of our time is being sucked up, you're going to have a whole lot of limited reporting, you're going to have lost reconciliations, you're going to have limited visibility into your completions, you're going to have inefficient processes, you're going to have a whole lot of lost time. And at the end of the day, you're generating a ton of risk. And if the last couple of years have taught us anything, you want the equivalent of social distancing for your system. Please avoid risk. I want to make sure everyone knows this. If you're on Oracle Cloud EPM, doesn't matter if you're on standard or if you're on enterprise, you have account reconciliation. Now, if you have another tool, like I said, around 18% of you have Blackline, 27% of you have some other product that's out there. Feel free to use whatever you've got. Just make sure you're actually doing this. My advice, don't go down to the detail level. Handle it at a higher level to begin with. If you really want to shrink this down so it fits in like a 45-day-ish window, focus on reconciling your balance sheet, your income statement, your consolidation system. If you want to add a few rules, make sure that you're matching some of like the local GAAP criteria. If you don't even want to do the reconciliations themselves yet, you can at least track that it has been being reconciled. There's an aspect of account reconciliation, which is just who got assigned to do what, did they complete it, is everything ready when they need it, what are my areas where I have potential risk situations, and then how can I speed up the overall process. So even if you're not ready to do automated, robotic process automation, full automated account recs, at least take the tasks and assign people off. If you do something like account reconciliation, not only can you automate all this, you're going to have much better visibility when things don't work, because they're not going to work perfectly. Let's say 2% of your numbers are not going to tie. And rather than let the humans try and go find all that out, we really want the system to tell us. We get that real-time governance. We want to make sure that there's not outstanding security issues, outstanding risk issues. And as I said, you're talking like 45 days to get all this done. If you're doing micro-transaction matching, much longer than 45 days. If you're doing, we're going to put every one of our accounting rules into reconciliation, like, I don't know, cash reserves can't drop below 0, or I don't know, maybe we're in banking and we have to have a certain ratio of this number to this number, and if we don't, we're out of compliance. That's not 45 days. But let's verify the numbers tie, 45 days. Scenario modeling. I'm asking an open-ended question for this one. So trying to figure out how many of you are actually doing your long-range planning in a system. Our are you doing it in a system at all? Or is it more kind of done in meetings? Is it done out loud? Do you not know what I mean when I say a system? Several of you are clicking on the last answer. What I mean is, like, Excel is not a system. So if you are doing your strategic planning in like an Excel workbook, you're really kind of you might have awesome templates, but it's not really something built to do long range strategic planning. If you're doing it in meetings where everybody talks out loud and says, well, this is what I think, you're not really doing, you don't really have a system. And shocking no one, 56% of you are not currently doing that in any sort of system. So when you're doing that long range planning, one of the key aspects of it is to never plan for one scenario. You think it's hard to plan a budget for 1 year, try planning where you're going to be in 5. So the concept that has come up is called scenario modeling, and it's been around for years. It didn't really come into the spotlight until the pandemic hit. If you wonder why some companies retracted their guidance last year and replaced it with nothing, it's because they only had one set of numbers. They weren't planning for what if the world goes haywire. So what happened was companies said, well, we don't know what our budget number is. Forget we ever told you. It's not going to be that number. Some companies then immediately spun out like a couple days later. Well, here's what we think they're going to be. And then some never did. They went through all of 2020 and into 2021, not giving any results. What a lot of people did that didn't have a system to do that scenario modeling and figure out what are the potential options, they were doing it in something manual, like something like Excel. But scenario modeling is about replacing those non-system solutions like Excel, the ones that are really manual, labor-intensive situations, with a place where it's really easy to come up with those alternate things. So COVID really showed us, or supply chain bottlenecks, that we have to have different scenarios for external factors. But there are also internal reasons why you should have different scenarios. For instance, what if we have a new product coming out? What if it launches really, really well? If it does, what impact is that going to have on my profitability? Or what if it's kind of a big nothing burger and everyone's like, well, that didn't really work, and you pull that product? You should have both those scenarios out there. What if you've all heard about the Great Resignation? What if half your sales force leaves in the next 12 months? What impact will that have on your revenue? What impact will that have on your recruiting expenses? What will it do to your pipeline for the next 12 months? Commodity prices are skyrocketing. Turns out inflation is real. Haven't really had to deal with it for the last 10 years. We've had 2% growth and 2% inflation until fairly recently. But what happens is when you have a V-shaped recession and recovery, inflation has a snap impact. Are we factoring that in? There's some areas where commodity prices are 30+% up. Do you have a scenario for that? And should you, going forward, if you're predominantly tied to one commodity, you should go, well, what if that commodity goes up 50%? What if it goes down 50%? What if it stays somewhere in the middle? And you should keep those scenarios ready at hand. Scenario modeling is about having those alternate scenarios ready. And if there's a scenario you really like, go out and make it happen. I was thinking for a second, like, what if COVID was really good for my company? No, don't make that happen. We are not supervillains in a Bond movie. But let's say, well, come on, I'm going to give you a wacky example. Some of the gasoline companies, the actual people operating at the pump, they're making more money than they ever have before. And you're like, how is that possible? Gas prices are like $3 to $5 a gallon. Like, they must get squeezed. Well, a lot of them actually took the opportunity because oil and gas prices increased to raise the price at the pump even more. So they're actually more profitable now with the price of gas increasing. So allow for the possibility there might be a situation that actually directly positively affects you and you can take advantage of it. I was trying to call out people running gas stations. I just read an article on that recently. So scenario modeling is built-in functionality. It is there inside of Oracle EPM Cloud. If you don't have Oracle EPM Cloud, you can do it. It's probably going to take you longer, but you can do it in like an on-prem Hyperion Planning or Strategic Finance. You can do it in some competing products. I like scenario modeling. We used to be called strategic modeling. Before that, it was called Hyperion Strategic Finance. Before that, it was called Alcar. I like scenario modeling because it's just really quick. If you actually go in and say, I want to use it out of the box, it'll give you a recommended set of like a couple hundred accounts for income, balance sheet, and cash flow. And you can just say, take my base numbers, copy them over, and change them by 15% or up them or lower them. It'll even like run all kinds of Monte Carlo simulations on it. It's a wonderful, wonderful product. It used to be really crazy expensive. When it was on-prem, Hyperion Strategic Finance cost, this is not an exaggeration, $24,500 per user per month. I'm sorry, $24,500 per user to buy it, plus 5 to 20% of that in maintenance, and that maintenance you had to pay every single year. So the cost made it so expensive, kind of only Treasury and M&A had access to it. It's now included as part of Oracle EPM Cloud. So take a peek ahead. Go look into your slightly closer crystal ball that has a bit of visibility next year. I'll give you a little bit of insight. We're going to have inflation at a pretty high level going into 2022. You're not going to see the supply chain bottleneck resolve by the end of this year. You're going to have the supply chain issues going into next year. You are still going to see COVID waves. Europe just hit their highest level of new cases in one day in the last week. This is not a case of like COVID has been solved. So go take those things you know are likely. So, hey, the end is in sight. Thank God. We could put 2021 to rest. But what are those most plausible scenarios for 2022 through about 2025? And you might think massive global recovery and expansion, or you might think, well, we were going to expand, we're going to hold off for a little bit, or I don't know, you might think we should definitely never, ever, ever expand because we tried it once, it was a bad idea. It could be, well, we have some new products that launch well in 2021, or and we want to launch some more in 2022, or they launched really badly in 2021. We don't want to do it. Take all those possible realistic scenarios for next year and then just bunch them together and say, okay, those kind of fit into these three groups, because the global expansion, as well as the new product launch, as well as a massive global recovery, that's kind of the best case scenario. And failed product, continuing waves, whatever, that's the worst case scenario. Kind of come up with 3 to 5 sort of most likely cases, and then expand them, drive them off KPIs so they're easy to revise, and expand them into full financial forecasts. If I give you a little bit of advice, take whatever your scenario plans are, circulate them widely. Don't make these things kept in a column on a spreadsheet that only finance ever sees, or something that only the CFO knows, because some of those plans are going to look pretty dire, and you want people to understand, don't let this situation occur. You also want people to know, if it turns out to be that dire situation, these are the actions you're going to take, because it shouldn't stop at a set of numbers. It has to be converted into a set of actions. How long does it take to put in place? If you actually implement out of the box scenario modeling, the Oracle EPM version in the cloud, again, the one that comes with standard and enterprise, 45 days. Let's talk narrative reporting. Why do we analyze data? Like, why do we care about going and diving into things? Why do we need a new product? Why wasn't Excel or FR or something good enough? Well, narrative reporting is about empowering end users. It's about making sure that they have access wherever they are to a package or a book of reports, making sure those are nicely standardized. If I need some additional data kind of spun up to do that analysis, I want narrative reporting to do that. And at the end of the day, I want users to go get the answers themselves. Now, when I talk self-service, it gets a little scary. People are like, well, but end users, they could query that table wrong. They could get the wrong answer. To truly do self-service, you need to give guardrails. If you don't want anyone hitting a gutter ball, put the bumpers in the side of the bowling alley. Make sure they're trained so they know how to navigate that data. Make sure it's really well structured so that it's like, well, what does this term or definition mean? Make sure that it's really, really hard to get the wrong answers, that somebody can't, oh, I forgot to add that in. Put it all into your system so that when they get the answer to something, they don't think, I'm looking at total revenue. It turns out, oh, you're looking at total revenue on an accrual basis before this adjustment, after this point, and during the close process. Once your data is ready, once you have your system set up that it could truly be self-service, it's time to take it to the next level. Next level is about narration. And what does that mean? So definitionally, narrative reporting, narrative, means to give context to your data through storytelling, through words. It's about taking a number and applying words to it. So it's not just saying you missed your budget by $500. Why did I miss my budget by $500? What is the thought process behind it? What is the why? What is the analysis of that individual number? Now, financial reporting is really a science. You can train computers to do it. Don't ever do something that you can train a computer to do, because eventually you'll get replaced by a computer. Do something that's more art, and there's an art to narrative. There's an art to telling a story about your data, telling people what information they should go look at. There is an art to being able to decide at what level you should have that story told, what explanations you should give and not give. Sadly, most people never get to the narrative part. They hand out, finance hands out income statements to everybody. They might be having a talk about it within their department, but they're certainly not having a dialogue with you about it. It's like FP&A is their job stops at the time when you hand the report over. You don't want that to happen. You want your job to be continuing and have a dialogue back and forth as they go, oh, could you explain more about where this number came from? Sure, here's some information about it. Oh, well, I dove into it, and here's why the number's off. A good place to start with narrative, because it is an art, summarize the key data points. Revenue trended up 10% because of this. Expenses are off 5%, and here's why. It's an awesome start. But a good narrative will better inform people. It will make them smarter. It will cut through the details so they don't have to go dive into them. It will do some summarization, and it will communicate quickly. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. A word is worth 1,000 numbers. If you could take 1,000 numbers and summarize it up in a sentence, by all means, please do it. Narrative reporting tends to show up when numbers aren't met. You need to explain why your budget was off. There's a whole lot of that going on in 2021. But there are also reasons to do it when you're beating your numbers. Is there something to learn from? It's really about opening up a communication. So don't think of it as just, we missed our numbers. There are a bunch of other reasons we could use it. Well, our numbers look good right now, but we have a risky issue coming up. Pay attention to this, because if this happens, we're going to be in a bad place. Or if there are decisions you made that affected your numbers, well, you'll notice the number took a dip in June. It's because we devoted more money towards marketing so we could have a bigger lift in Q4. That's important, so people don't ever have to remember, why was there a dip followed by a rapid rise? Maybe you hit certain milestones. We were able to pay off our entire line of credit. We don't need our revolver anymore, or we've grown our EBITDA by this percentage. If something unexpected does happen, you don't want everyone to have to remember it. You don't want to have to dig into the numbers like, oh, well, we experienced a supply chain issue on the West Coast. No, I'll give you a better example. We experienced a supply chain issue in Europe because a ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. We all know that right now. Thank you, Evergreen. But is it something someone's going to remember when they look back and go, why did our revenue numbers plummet for exactly 1 month and just in Europe? Well, you can also use it to explain where you're going. This is our vision. This is our direction. This is how we're going to be changing things moving ahead. Any of those footnotes, any of those cases, anything anybody wants to talk about, capture all those. Open up that dialogue. Now, there's a product that does this, which is narrative reporting. Now, narrative reporting can be, when I see it, I mean everything related to reporting, but there are kind of a couple subcomponents to it. One of those components is management reporting, and management reporting is really about a pixel perfect report. It's about an income statement that looks really pretty. It looks like an income statement, or balance sheet looks like a balance sheet. It is your replacement for FR. It's your replacement for anything you're doing reporting, and God forbid Excel. It does all those beautiful report creations, and it has a much better interface than FR because it was actually made in this millennium. It was made to be cloud first, kind of looks like an iPad. Super simple to put in place. Narrative reporting within the product kind of adds some capabilities to that. It not only does that kind of dialogue I was talking about before, it also adds some ability to do task management. Who's going to provide this report on this day? Who's going to go to it? Provides bursting capabilities. It lets you bundle non-Oracle EPM stuff together. So maybe most of your data is coming out of Oracle EPM, but something's coming out of, I don't know, Excel or something. You haven't replaced that yet, or somebody wants to take a PowerPoint slide in, or have like a word list of open letter from the CFO. It can bundle all that together into a nice report package. XBRL capability. On-prem, there was a product Oracle provided, Hyperion Disclosure Management, and there was a little bit of XBRL functionality kind of in the cloud. They do that now through a partnership. So it's a partnership with Easy XBRL to do it, but it's a full kind of plugin within narrative reporting. It's just you're not getting it kind of like right outside the box. Why is this important? It's a cloud solution, gives you secure, collaborative, process-driven approach to defining, to authoring, to reviewing, to signing off on your report packages, and then just opening up a conversation about it. This is, to be clear, Oracle's strategic EPM reporting solution. If you're going like, is it Oracle Analytics Cloud? Is it, I don't know, making Essbase cubes, doing Excel retrieves through SmartView? Is it FR? No, it's this. Narrative reporting is Oracle's strategic EPM reporting solution. So in a nutshell, full lifecycle report development and packages with a dialogue open up about it. You could convert an FR report to narrative reporting if you had access to it in like a couple of days. I'm saying 30 days to take maybe like your board book, put it into the system, and then open up a dialogue about it. If you have 5,000 reports, you're not converting them over the next 30 days unless you aim 5,000 people at it. But getting started in narrative reporting, it's a few weeks. Speaking of getting started, you're not going to be able to implement a new financial close system by the end of the year. If you want to try, though, call me. That'd be a fun kind of challenge. See if I can get it done by year end. No, realistically, maybe you want to replace your consolidation system next year, but you don't know where the bottlenecks are. You don't know where the time is kind of being sucked up. Well, we have the ability to just do the task manager portion of the overall what is considered financial close and consolidation. So we could realistically say, let's take the closed tasks and let's start tracking them. Let's assign tasks to people. Let's manage them. Let's monitor those tasks. Let's define who's going to do what, where, when, and why. And we can actually start seeing where those bottlenecks occur in the process. It's like, oh, well, a bunch of stuff has to finish on day one before day two can start. But if I move this one thing and I started a little before day one, the day two task could move up and I could reduce my close cycle by, let's say 20% as part of it. You also have an aspect which is supplemental manager. So supplemental manager, supplemental data, it used to be supplemental data manager on-prem. This is a way to let you take external data and really start, maybe, I don't know, it's a list of account reconciliations, or it's maybe your validations you wanted to track, or a list of credit lines that you wanted to actually bring in. Well, you have the ability to do all of those in Supplemental Manager without actually fully implementing the entire FCC product. So just be aware that's out there. It's something you can use. But for the most part, what you're probably going to do between now and the end of the year, if you're going to tackle this, is doing the Task Manager side. And Task Manager is about communications. It's about taking what is a static closed calendar. It doesn't have to be closed. It could be a static planning calendar. Each year we do this for these months. It could be a static forecasting calendar. It's about taking those static calendars and making them dynamic. You have no idea how many times I have walked around an accounting department at a Fortune 500 company, and their calendar is literally something someone made in Excel with like black lines separating the cells and says this on day one, this on day two, and they printed it out and stuck it to everybody's cubicle wall. Now we're all at home. We may have it printed out and sitting next to our at-home desk, but the problem with those printed out calendars, if you finish the day one stuff at noon on day one, the day two cell doesn't move over. Those tasks don't start happening on day one. So your calendar isn't dynamic. It is a fixed calendar. These things always happen on these specific days. So it's about making it more dynamic. It's about communicating it better. It's about taking processes that are repeatable and templatizing them. Is there a way I could just repeat and make sure this occurs? So within Task Manager, it's really easy to implement. The interface is extremely simple. It's really easy to communicate. And it doesn't take very long. I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking 45 days to take your whole close process and put it into a calendar. This assumes you're not a Fortune 50 company and you're operating in 200 different countries and everyone has their own gap closing schedules. But if you're, I don't know, let's say 10 countries or less and your close cycle is pretty straightforward, you can start automating it making it a more dynamic automatic notification system in 45 days. Or if you're like, I don't really want to fiddle with my close, go use Task Manager to put your forecasting calendar in. Doubtless you're going to be doing a lot of reforecasting in 2022. You can do that within Task Manager. So speaking of planning, historically, in an on-prem world, you could not implement a planning module in any reasonable amount of time. Let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 months was kind of reasonable. The reason for that is the mentality they used when they designed them, which was, we are going to replace this function, and however it is you budget, we're going to replace all of it. And if you want to turn anything off, you're probably going to break something. So you need a high price, but deservedly so, consultant to come in and spend months figuring out how to disable certain functionality of the on-prem modules. Not the case with the cloud. The cloud actually flipped it on its head. It said, oh, you want to do planning inside of financials? Well, decide what aspect of financials you want to use and just turn that aspect on. So make it, instead of, we're the Spanish Inquisition, you must pray exactly this way. Instead, it's more, we have all these fun things you could play with. Would you like to do some revenue planning? Or maybe you would like to do some cost of goods sold. Oh, you care about OpEx? Awesome, we'll turn on OpEx planning. Would you like us to turn on driver-based planning while you're at it? Or would you like to stick with a standard series of accounts? So you can start small. You can start with pre-built OpEx, because operating expense, pretty standard, no matter what company you're in, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what size you're in. I can tell you 80% of your OpEx planning is the same. So start by turning that one on. Then maybe later on, you're like, oh, I've got a couple people who do balance sheet planning. They do it in Excel. It's probably not a great idea. We're going to turn on balance sheet planning. Well, you know what? Now I have my income statement, because I have revenue coming from somewhere else. I have expenses. I have my balance sheet. I can feed out automatically my cash flow. And then eventually turn on revenue. You have full income statement planning. You might say, I want to turn on analysis. You don't have to turn on the other frameworks. You can turn on piece by piece. And here's the really cool part. If you turn on one of those things that feeds the financials, it will automatically feed. So like, let's say you start with expense planning and you're just sort of manually putting in, dollar amounts, or you do a little bit of driver base because you check that checkbox. So you're doing this many people times this rate gives me this labor. And then you decide to turn on workforce. Workforce will feed into financials. By the way, you can also implement this standalone. I'll tell you the two most common, I want to stand up that frameworks. One of them is workforce, and it's because labor is your number one controllable cost. The second one is financials, specifically the expense budgeting portion of financials. So just look at it, go, yeah, we're doing custom workforce planning. Do we really think that what we do is so special and unique that there are not best practices for doing workforce planning? I'd like to kind of see what workforce planning looks like. You could turn it on, set it up, get it up and running for, maybe you don't even want to do all the workforce. I just want to set up and running for corporate headquarters, going into next year, so we can do employee planning, or I want to do, job code planning across the board. You could turn on just capital. I really just want to get a handle on my my depreciated assets going into next year. Projects. This one is kind of fun because anything with a start date and an end date, you can plan with projects. And what's interesting is how often the first department to implement it is IT. And it's simply because IT has a whole lot of things with defined start dates, defined end dates, and it's kind of a one-off that doesn't really fit with the rest of the planning process. Most planning process is, take what you're doing and assume it goes until you're told to stop. Take like planning for rent, or take like planning by labor. This, on the other hand, is much more about let's assume that we want to start building out our data center on January 1st and we want to be done by October. That's what projects is built for. And it even gives a nice little kind of a cool approval hierarchy. So if you've got a bunch of proposed projects, it'll help filter through all those projects. Depending on which framework you want to do and how much of it you want to do, you can do it in like 30 to 60 days. Again, this is not a full-blown planning implementation. It's not implementing every planning framework, but you could grab one, probably workforce. If you're an IT person, maybe go grab projects, use it for IT planning by the end of the year, maybe OpEx planning. But every one of these is a siloed thing. That's how it can be done so quickly. I really need to upgrade by the end of the year. I really need to do scenario modeling by the end of the year. You're not really going, what should I do big picture? So we've talked about those 6 enhancements, but they're siloed enhancements. Good news, you can do them. There will be an awesome fireworks show on December 31st. Declare that fireworks show to be all about you. They're shooting off fireworks because you managed to do X by the end of the year. But I want to give you the 7th EPM enhancement. Originally, when I was titling this presentation, I titled it 6 enhancements, and I decided, well, if 7-minute abs is good, like 8-minute abs would be even better. So without further ado, here's the 7th. Come up with a plan. Come up with a plan that doesn't do siloed solutions. Come up with a plan that doesn't do firefighting. Come up with a way to control what is going to happen so the world doesn't happen to you. You go out and happen to the world. Now, you're probably not going to be able to come up with a strategy plan and have it implemented by the end of the year. But what you can do is you can put a framework for strategy in place so that you can kick off 2022 with this really great roadmap of here's what I'm going to do in 2022, here's what I'm going to do in 2023, here's what I'm going to do in 2024, so that you can make the next 3 years the best it can possibly be. So at the end of each year, when they set those fireworks off, you will go, cool, year 1 of my strategy, done. That firework that went off, all for me. When I'm kicking off a strategic assessment, if some people are surprised, does Edward actually do consulting? Yes, I do. So I for certain companies, I will go out on day 1 and help them figure out what the high level strategy is. And this is an exercise I have them do, so you can play along in your mind. Imagine that your company is the x-axis and your industry is the y-axis, and you're trying to assess how rapidly you are changing. So if your company is like, we're really slow to do anything, you're on the low side. If on the other hand, you're like, oh my God, we drink Red Bull every single morning, it changed us, and we've never had an idea we didn't want to try, your company's over on the high side. Don't put your dot on the screen yet. Now imagine how fast does your industry change? Not how fast historically has it changed, how fast is it changing right now? And the reason I say right now is there's industries that sat still for years. Groceries. We really didn't like having our groceries delivered. But yet in the last 18 months, we've done more grocery delivery than we've done in the entirety of history combined going into COVID. It's caused a change in the type of products we buy, how much we're willing to pay, how fast it is we want those, what type of things we want to buy online versus the type of things we want to walk in. It's changed the whole concept of impulse buying. So right now, the grocery stores are going through this massive upheaval. Look at restaurants. The way you kind of make, prepare, and sell food hasn't changed a ton, but now you walk into any restaurant and they've got a bookshelf labeled Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, and it's all the delivery sections. I went into a Panera the other day and they thought I was a delivery person. I'm like, no, I'm here to place an order. And they said, oh, like as a human? I'm like, yeah. And they said, oh, it's going to be 35 minutes. We're having to fulfill all the delivery orders first. So if you, wherever your industry is, now imagine the intersection of those two. Go put your finger on the screen. This is the category that you were in at your company. So let's say you were in the bottom left. Cool. That's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't get me wrong. You might be in grocery or restaurant or whatever, and it's going to suddenly start changing, but things are pretty static right now. Let's say on the other hand, your finger was in the top left. We are slow to change, but our industry is changing really, really fast. You are going to fall. If you're on the Fortune 500, you're going to be gone within 10 years. I'm calling it right now. 300 of the current companies on the Fortune 500 were not on that list 10 years ago, which means 300 companies disappeared off the Fortune 500 list in the last 10 years. It's companies like that. Let's say your finger's in the bottom right. Congratulations. You are the one that are making the change that the rest of the industry needs to follow. So wherever you are in there, this really drives what is your strategy. Now, I do want to say there's a difference between strategy and tactics. Think of it as the captain on a ship. Most people think the captain on the ship is the one that spins the wheel and redirects the ship. That's actually not the captain's job. The captain decides what direction the ship is going to head in. Like, where are we big picture trying to go? The helmsperson, traditionally the helmsman, the helmsperson is the one who actually steers the boat. They actually make minor course corrections. But there has to be the strategy set at the top. And it is going to determine if the captain's like, oh, we're going to go left, we're going to go at this speed. Okay, radio down to the engine room, talk to the helms person, we got to go change all this. The strategy coordinates all those activities, all those different things that have to occur. So like maybe you looked at that list earlier and like, I want to do account recs and I want to do scenario modeling and I have to upgrade my system right now because it's going to fall off support in a couple of days. Cool. But what is your strategy for keeping all those in sync? What is your strategy for getting account recs to work well with scenario modeling, to getting you off of an on-prem world, getting you into a world where you're setting goals? Strategy to me is like a vision. Where big picture do we want to go? Now, if you try and do tactics without a strategy, your tactics can happen, but they're going to be haphazard. They're going to be contradictory. They're going to be self-defeating. You're going to end up with like shadow IT departments as every group goes, well, I don't know what we're doing big picture, so I've got to go build my own little thing, because tactics are going to be done at all levels and strategy steers those. If you have a strategy, it's amazing because the tactics actually support it. Everything is coordinated. Everything is working as it should. We have great means of getting things done. If you don't, they're going to be contradictory. They're going to end up fighting each other. So as we think strategically, we have to have some idea about where we're going. And I'll tell you the key to successful business strategies, key to figuring out where you're going, it's big picture thinking, but there's more to it. It's about getting executive involvement, executive buy-in, figuring out what tools you should buy and what tools you should retire. It's about getting resources dedicated. It's about getting commitment on your financials, getting commitment on your resources. It's about agreement on what those priorities are going to look like. If you're not thinking strategically, you're going to be running, but you're not going to be going anywhere. It's what I like to call treadmill thinking. Well, I don't have time to do the strategy because I have to close the books every single month for the rest of my life. That is soul sucking. It takes out innovation. It will cause key people to leave. It will cause you to leave. It will cause people to be indecisive. It'll cause way too much manual processes. It'll cause rogue shadow IT reporting departments and a whole lot of other things. If you're going to do one of these strategy plans, I'll give you some advice on when you should do it. If I could jump to the right side, do it in the first 3 weeks of December. People don't want to do projects. They don't want to fiddle with anything between like now and the end of the year. So even though I told you you could do all 6 of those things between now and the end of the year, you're like, oh, do I really want to upset the apple cart with the holidays coming? Strategy is, so what happens is people actually have available time. It's weird. People think no one is available for the last 5 weeks of the year. That's not true. They're actually really available in a lot of cases, the first, second, and third weeks of December. They just don't want to touch anything. It's like this. Think of it as the final like 4 days of school before summer. The teachers don't want to teach you anything because they don't want to test you on it. So everyone's like, okay, just like ride it out until the year is over. So my advice, figure out why you need to do something strategically. And I've given you some good advice before, but one of the most common reasons is you just don't want to go into next year with silos. Figure out how it's going to help you. Figure out what you're going to get at the end of coming up with your strategy. Figure out, are you going to meet in person? You're going to do it hybrid. Figure out when you're going to do it. Again, my strong advice, do it in the first weeks of December. Or if you're going to do this, like you want help, it's like, Edward, I want you to help lead me through this. My advice, I'll tell you, our peak of our strategic assessments, it's the first 3 weeks of December, and it's 2nd through the 5th week of January. When people get into next year and they go, oh shoot, we have no plan for what we're going to do next year. So that's when you should do it. Who should it be in attendance? At what level do you want to do it? What's that scope going to look like? You can decide to do something strategically. You can decide to assess and come up with that 1 to 3 year roadmap. You can do it, decide you want to do it. You can execute on it. You can make it happen. You can get results. You can do it in 45 days. Even though 45 days doesn't sound like a lot of time, there are ways to finish this year really strong. And more importantly, there are ways to have a strong foundation to make 2022 even better. So I hope you take one of those 7 ideas and they seem really, really inspiring to you. It's like, yep, I'm at least going to go tackle that one. I haven't done any advertising, but if you need help, we are Oracle's reigning Business Analytics Partner of the Year. We've won their Partner of the Year for EPM and Analytics 5 times. And if I could humble brag for a second, we have a 77 Net Promoter Score. That is beyond best in class. That's actually world class. It's actually higher than like Nordstrom. It doesn't happen in the services industry, but that's an independently validated number. And that's my humble brag for the day. So remember all those timeframes. And if you're going like, wow, that sounds awesome, I'm not ready to do it right now, or I need more data, I've got you. I got your back. On December 1st, we're going to talk about how to do that upgrading to 11.2. December 8th, we're going to cover account reconciliation, how it's going to change your end user's life. We're going to talk on December 15th about how to quickly get from FR, financial reporting, over to narrative. We're going to talk at January. Okay, you've thought it through, you want to do something strategically, you don't know how to do it on your own. I'll talk to you about how to do a strategic assessment, how to do a roadmap. I think I'll have Joe Altman join me on that day. We got task manager, scenario modeling, and the planning modules. Thank you very, very much for an hour out of your life. I appreciate it. I hope you take what it is you've learned and you pass it on. And if I don't talk to you before then, have an amazing rest of your year. Enjoy those fireworks that are just for you. Everybody, take care.